Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so let's quickly go through the fiqh words. These keywords are very important in fiqh. So these words will come up again and again when we go throughout and when we learn all the chapters of fiqh. So when we learn the chapter of wudu, when we learn the chapter of cleanliness, when we learn the chapter of salah, hajj, zakat. So everything when we learn fiqh, these words will come up again and again. So this is why you need to know all of these words perfectly. You should know what all of these words mean. These are very important. So you should know them inside out. Okay, so let's start. Let's go through these words. Some of them you'll know already because they've come up in the wudu words, and a few you may not know. But nevertheless, you have to know all of them properly. Okay, and you should try and know the singular and also the plural as well. Okay, so now let's go through it. Okay, so our first word is fard. Okay, so fard and the plural is fara'id. So the dot underneath the D is just to show you this is a word, not a dal. Fard and fara'id. So the a, you stretch it, fara'id. Okay, so this means compulsory. By leaving a fard action out, the act remains incomplete. Okay, so we learned this in the fara'id, the wudu, isn't it? So when we learned wudu, there are four things. For example, there are four things that you have to do in wudu, which was to wash the face, arms, mass of the hair, and wash the feet. And we learned that if any one of these four things was left out, the whole wudu will not count, even if you've done everything else perfectly. But if you left out one of the four fara'id of wudu, the entire wudu will not count. So that's how important fard is. If even a single one is left out, the whole thing does not count. It's as if you haven't done it at all. Okay, so the fard is very important. Likewise, let's say even a single dot of the four fara'id of wudu were left out, you've learnt that the whole wudu will not count. So the entire fard must be done properly for that action to count. And if a fard is missing, even part of a fard is missing, that whole thing will not count. Okay, so that's what fard means. So you have to memorize that word. So if I say what does fard mean, you have to tell me it means compulsory. Okay, next let's go to wajib. Okay, so wajib is, and the plural is wajibat, which means necessary, and it's right next to fard. By leaving a wajib action out, the act remains incomplete. But sometimes what you can do when you leave a wajib out, you can make up for it later. Okay, so fard and wajib is basically the same thing. In terms of having to do them, it's exactly the same. So just like how you have to do a fard, exactly the same way you have to do a wajib as well. So there's no difference in terms of that. So let's say if you miss out a fard, you'll be sinful and Allah can punish you for it. Exactly the same way, if you miss out a wajib, you'll be sinful and Allah can punish you for it. Like the example of the praying 5 times salah. So to pray Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha is fard. And likewise to pray the witr salah, which is 3 rakats after the Isha salah, is wajib. So it's equally as important as the 5 fara'id prayers. So you have to take note of that. Fard and wajib is more or less basically the same thing. Okay, so now the question is, why not just call them one thing? Why did we have to single them out? Why did we have to call one fard, and why did we have to call the other one wajib? Okay, so now this is for the older students, because the younger students don't really need to know this, and neither do the older students, but it's just good to know. And if you do not understand it, it doesn't really matter, so just ignore it. But if you do understand it, alhamdulillah, it's even better. Okay, so fard are those things which are... by the way, if I mention any extra information in this, you have to take note of it. So you can either pause the video and then take notes, or take notes as we're going along. So if I mention anything extra or any explanatory notes, you should be writing them down, either on your sheet or on a separate piece of paper. Okay, so fard are those things which are understood very clearly that we have to do them, and they are fard. And they're so clear that if someone says no, we don't have to do it, they'll actually not be a Muslim anymore, because it's just so clear, everyone understands it. Like for example, praying 5 times salah. Every single Muslim knows that this is fard, and Allah has clearly stated in the Quran we have to pray salah. The Prophet has clearly told us that we have to pray 5 times salah. So now, because it's so clear, if someone says no, I don't believe in 5 times salah, it's actually 4 times salah, I don't believe in Isha, for example, so they will not be a Muslim. So if you deny a fard, you will not be a Muslim. Whereas wajib it's not as, you can say that it's not as clear. There is room to say no, actually it's not necessary, it's actually just a recommendation. So there's room to doubt it, so another person can argue it the other way. So these sort of things, if they say no, I don't believe it's necessary, they won't be a non-Muslim. That's the difference. Like for example, the witr salah after Isha. So we say no, it's necessary, you have to do it. If you don't do it, you'll be sinful. Whereas Imam Shafi'i, according to him, is sunnah mu'akkada. So he doesn't put it in the same level as fard. He puts it one level down. Although, you still have to do it according to him. It's not that you don't have to do it. But he just puts it one level down because of the evidences which are in front of him. So that's the difference. So if you deny a fard, you'll become a non-Muslim straight away. But if you deny wajib, you won't become a non-Muslim straight away. So that's the difference. So fard is something which is extremely clear. Wajib is something that's not as clear. Everyone understood that? Okay, so that's our first category done. So if you look, I put this in sections. So this is section 1 in one paragraph, which is the fard and wajib. So you have to memorize both these words clearly. Okay, so now we're going to go into the sunnah section, which is this part over here. Okay, so sunnah is a singular and a plural is sunan. These are actions which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had carried out. If it is missed out, the action will be done, but the reward will be less. Okay, so the word sunnah is anything that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. Let's say covering head while wearing a hat is a sunnah. Brushing your teeth with a miswak is a sunnah. Eating with your right hand and drinking with the right hand is a sunnah. Sitting down and eating is a sunnah. So all those things that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do, all of these things are a sunnah. What else is a sunnah? Let's say a type of clothing they used to wear. To wear the same type of clothing is also sunnah. To sleep on your right side with your right hand underneath your left cheek is a sunnah. So you get the idea. So those things that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do, and they weren't fard, then we call them a sunnah. Because obviously if you had to do them, then we'll probably call them a fard. Like, praying the 5 times salah. Okay, but sunnah is of 2 types. There's one sunnah which is very important that we have to do. That the Prophet ﷺ done it, and he always used to do it. And he also told us to do it as well. So these are what we call the very, very important sunnahs. So because he used to do it, and he told us to do it, that means we have to do it as well. So this is what we call sunnah mu'akkada. Mu'akkada in Arabic just means emphasized. So on your side of your sheet, just make a note of that. So just draw an arrow somewhere or just write it on top. Right, emphasized or very important. So sunnah mu'akkada is that sunnah which is very emphasized, which is heavily emphasized. And they are actions which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did regularly. So he would always do them. Maybe he just missed them out once or twice because he had a valid excuse. Because he had an excuse, so he didn't do them. But generally he'd do them all the time. So these are the sunnah mu'akkada. So these are the ones that we have to do. Okay, now this is very important. You need to write this down, what I'm about to tell you. Okay, what I'll do, I'll just type it up at the end, over here. Okay, so sunnah. So now what's the rule? So now the question is, if you miss out a sunnah mu'akkada, will you be sinful or not? So that's the question. Is it just like the fard, that if you miss it out even once, that you'll be sinful? And by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention, the fard and wajib, you can't miss it out at all. Doesn't matter what the excuse is. Let's say salah is fard. You can't leave it out for whatever excuse. Even if you're ill, you have to do it. If you can't stand, let's say praying salah is fard. If you can't even stand up and pray salah, you have to sit down and pray salah. If you can't sit down and pray salah, then you have to lie down and pray salah. So fard and wajib, you have to do no matter what. And if for whatever reason you had to miss it, because there's no way of doing it whatsoever, then you have to ask Allah for forgiveness and beg Allah for forgiveness, so He forgives you for missing the fard and the wajib. Okay, so I just forgot to clarify that. Okay, so now going back to the sunnah mu'akkada. So now what's the rule if you miss it? Okay, so I want you to just make a note of this. So I'll type it up over here. If you miss it out once or twice, you won't be sinful. But if you have a habit of missing it, I'm sorry, then you can be reprimanded by Allah. Okay, so this is the rule of Sunnah Mu'akkada, and you need to write this down, and you need to remember this rule. And if I give you a test on the Fiqh terminologies or just the Fiqh test, this will be a question in the test because this is very important. So what happens if you miss a Sunnah Mu'akkada? Are you sinful straight away? So the answer is if you miss it at once or twice, you won't be sinful. Let's say today I woke up late and I didn't do my 4 rakat sunnats of Dhuhr, the ones that you pray before the Fard. That's the Sunnah Mu'akkada. So I missed it. So will I be sinful straight away? No. I won't be sinful. Let's see if I done it again, a few days later I happen to miss my Sunnah, 4 rakat Sunnah of Dhuhr. No, I won't be sinful. But as soon as it starts becoming a habit and you start missing it often, then that's where the problem starts. Then I can be reprimanded by Allah. Maybe Allah can punish me in some sort of way. Maybe Allah knows best. Like in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man taraka sunnati lam yanal shafa'ati." That whoever leaves my sunnah will not attain my intercession, meaning on the day of judgment. So when the Prophet ﷺ will intercede and beg Allah on behalf of the ummah, to forgive us and enter us into paradise, then we will not be from amongst those who the Prophet ﷺ will intercede for on our behalf. So it's very important that we do the sunnah, fulfill all the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ and follow his lifestyle. Or let's say another hadith, part of a lengthy hadith, the Prophet said, I can't remember the exact wording, said, لَوْ تَرَكْتُمْ سُنَّةَ نَبِيِّكُمْ لَضَلَلْتُمْ. That if you leave the sunnah of your Prophet, then you'll go astray. So this is mainly referring to the sunnah mu'akkada, those sunnah that we have to do. So it's a warning to us. If we stop leaving the sunnah mu'akkada, then we're going to go astray. We're going to follow the wrong path. Okay, so just to summarize, if you miss it out once or twice, you won't be sinful. But if you keep on missing it out and starts to become a habit, then that's a problem. Then maybe Allah can punish us, or reprimand by Allah. Allah can do something. Take us to task for why we missed it. Okay, so that's very important to clarify. Okay, so that's Sunnah Mu'akkada done. So all you have to remember is actions which Muhammad ﷺ done regularly. And then if I ask you what the rule of Sunnah Mu'akkada is, you have to remember this. If you miss it out once or twice, you won't be sinful. But if you have a habit of missing it, then you can be reprimanded by Allah. Okay, now coming on to our second type of Sunnah. So this is Sunnah Ghair Mu'akkada. So Sunnah, obviously you know what that means. Those things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do. Mu'akkada means emphasized. Ghair negates it. Those sunnahs which aren't heavily emphasized. So they're not as important as the Prophet ﷺ. They're not as important as the first category of Sunnah Mu'akkada. So Sunnah Ghair Mu'akkada. So you can write it down, make a note what Ghair means. Like not as important, basically. Not as heavily emphasized. Although we should still try and do it, obviously, because it's a Sunnah of our beloved Messenger Muhammad ﷺ. We should try and copy him in everything. Actions which Muhammad ﷺ did occasionally. So he didn't do them all the time. He done them sometimes and he left them sometimes. So this is Sunnah Ghair Mu'akkada. Okay, so now this is done. So we learned that Sunnah means those things that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to do. And then we said Sunnah is of two types. Sunnah Mu'akkada, which is heavily emphasized, we have to do them. And those things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do all the time. And Sunnah Ghair Mu'akkada, we don't have to do them because the Prophet ﷺ done them occasionally. But it's good to do them, obviously. It's very rewarding. We should try and do them to the best of our ability. Okay, so now we've done the first two sections. We've done the Fard and Wajib, which were compulsory. They're one category. And then we've done the Sunnah category as well. And we said that the Sunnah is of two types. And we've done them. Okay, now let's go into the Makruh category. Okay, so now Makruh, the word Makruh literally means disliked. So over here. So here, Makruh. But, by the way, okay, yeah, go on. So this is Makruh. So if I say something is makruh, it means I'm saying this is disliked. Allah dislikes it or the Prophet ﷺ dislikes it. So that's why it's not good for us to do. We shouldn't do them. But makruh is also of two types. Just like how Sunnah was of two types, makruh is also of two types. Okay, first let's learn what they are. First is makruh tanzihi. So you need to learn all the Arabic terms, by the way. makruh tanzihi. That's what this is. Something that is disliked in Islam. If a makruh tanzihi act is carried out, you will not be sinful or rewarded. Okay, so something that is disliked in Islam. If a makruh tanzih act is carried out, you will not be sinful. Okay, so this is something which is bad to do. It's not good to do it. But it's not so bad that Allah will punish us and will be sinful for it. For example, let's say the Prophet ﷺ said they should not go to a masjid after having eaten garlic. Because when you eat garlic, your breath will smell. And you shouldn't go to the masjid with a bad smell. So, we'll call this, so going to the masjid with a bad smell, we'll say this is makruh tanzihi. Okay, it's disliked. Tanzih is like a light form of disliked. So you can translate it as lightly disliked. So, although going to the masjid with a bad smell is something bad, and you should not do it, but it's not so bad that Allah will punish you for it. So it's something which is disliked, you should avoid. Although makruh tanzihi, some scholars say that if you keep on doing it, then Allah can punish you for it. If you have a habit of doing it all the time, then maybe Allah can punish you for it. But anyway, so that's what you have to understand. So it's not so bad that Allah will punish you. Okay, so makruh again. So that's the first type. Second type is makruh tahrimi. So again, makruh disliked, but this is tahrimi. So look at the keywords here. First is ha. So I'm going to say them in Arabic. Ha, ra, and mim. Ha, ra, mim. What does that remind you of? Ha, ra, and then mim. Haram, isn't it? Haram. So now this will. So this is how you remember this. Which one's which? So makruh tahrimi. That makruh which is severely disliked and close to haram. Sinful if carried out. This one and haram over here, they're supposed to be together. Okay, so makruh tahrimi and haram, in terms of doing them, they're exactly the same. They're exactly the same. So just how you'll be sinful for doing a makruh tahrimi, you'll be exactly the same. You'll be sinful for doing a haram as well. Haram is something which is forbidden in Islam. If a haram act is carried out, you will be sinful. The difference between makruh tahrimi and haram is like the difference between fard and wajib. You know how we said fard is extremely clear, and wajib it's not as clear. Or we had to use analogy or something to get the ruling, but ignore that anyway. So it's like that. Haram is something completely clear. You cannot deny it that it's not haram. Whereas makruh tahrimi is not as clear, or is basically, I don't want to go into the detail, but that's what you have to understand. But in terms of doing them, haram and makruh tahrimi is exactly the same. Just how you'll be sinful for doing a haram, exactly the same way you'll be sinful for doing a makruh tahrimi. So that's what you have to understand for now. So that's makruh tahrimi. So let me, for example, you can understand it like this. Okay, let's look over here. Okay, this is halal sign. So these are things that are halal, like, I don't know, apples, orange juice, halal meat, whatever. Yeah, this is halal. Makruh tanzih is over here. So it's right next to halal. So makruh tanzih is just lightly disliked. So it's not halal, but it's close to it. It's over here. So because it's so close to halal, you won't be sinful for doing it. Whereas makruh tahrimi is all the way on the other side. So look over here. So this is haram over here. This is haram. So this is like, we can't eat alcohol, we can't drink alcohol, we can't eat pig, we can't, there's so many things that we can't do. We can't steal, whatever. These are all haram things. Makruh tahrimi is very close to haram. That's how you can understand it. So just the sin-wise, if you do a haram, you'll be sinful. If you eat pork, for example, you'll be sinful, or drink alcohol, you'll be sinful. Exactly the same way, if you do makruh tahrim, you'll also be sinful as well. So in terms of the ruling, these two are the same. And in terms of the ruling, these two are almost the same. In terms of you won't be sinful for doing it. Okay, so that's just a quick clarification on that. Okay, and then we learned haram, isn't it? We learned that haram is forbidden in Islam, and we should already know that, isn't it? It's common knowledge. Okay, so now we've done the three sections. We've done the fard and wajib, they were compulsory, and learn the sunnah, those things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do, learn the emphasized ones and the non-emphasized ones. And then we learned makruh, the two types of makruh. Tanzihi, which is lightly disliked, tahrimi, which is heavily disliked. And then we learned haram, which is forbidden in Islam. And then we said makruh, tahrim, and haram, more or less the same thing. Okay, so now let's go down. Okay, so now mustahab. We've already come across this in our wudu, so you should already know what this means. Mustahab, and the plural is mustahabbat, which means preferable, something which is good to do. If a mustahab act is carried out, you will be rewarded, and if missed out, you'll not be sinful. Okay, so now let's go through. Let me explain mustahab to you. Okay, so the most important thing is obviously fard and wajib. They go straight on top. And the next most important thing under that is a sunnah mu'akkad, obviously, because this we have to do them as well. Fard and wajib we have to do, even if we miss it once, we'll be sinful. Sunnah mu'akkada is not as important as fard, but we still have to do them. Then one less important than that is a sunnah ghair mu'akkada. So it's still a sunnah at the end of the day. One less important than sunnah ghair mu'akkada, or underneath that you can say this is mustahab. So it's not as important as sunnah, but it's something which is good to do. So if you leave it out completely, it's not a problem at all. But it's something which is good to do. And if you do it, then you'll be rewarded for it. So this we call mustahab. So something which is preferable or liked in Islam. Okay, so now one less than that is mubah. So mubah refers to those things which are completely just allowed. They're halal. No, they're not. You're not encouraged to do it, and you're not like discouraged from doing it either. It's like, let's say, I don't know, going to your fridge and drinking orange juice. No, it's not sunnah or mustahab. It's just something which is neutral. If you do it, it's good. If you don't do it, if you don't drink your orange juice, it's not anything bad. Okay, so this is mubah. So I want you to remember this word as well. Okay, so now we're going on to some just other related words. Okay, so we learned what nawaqid means. Singular is naqid. Actions that break other actions. So we learned those things that break wudu. Which actions break wudu, isn't it? So that's nawaqid with a dot at the end. Nawaqid, those actions that break other actions. And then we're nafl. This is very important. You need to know this. Nafl, plural is nawafil. Nafl means optional. It's kind of like a mubah, but it's not quite. But let's read the definition. Optional. If you wish to carry this action out, you'll be rewarded, but if you wish to leave it out, you'll not be sinful. Okay, so especially in salah and different types of worships, you have nafl acts. So you have nafl prayers. They're not fard or sunnah. Well, the Prophet did do them, but they're not like as important that you have to do them. That's where they come in the category of nafl. These are optional prayers or optional fasts. So those things that we don't have to do, but we get rewarded for doing them. So these come in a chapter of worship. So those extra worships that we do, that we don't have to do, we call them nafl. They come in the nafl category, optional. Okay, so we've done nawaqid, which means actions that break other actions. We've done nafl, which means optional. And then we said tahara. So you need to know this as well. Tahara means cleanliness or purity. So at the moment in fiqh, we're learning the chapter of cleanliness, isn't it, and purity. So we start off by learning the wudu, how to do wudu. Then we go into other things as well regarding tahara and cleanliness. And then najasa, this is going to come up later. We're going to have a whole chapter on it, is impurity. So najasa means impurity. So these are the words I want you to learn and memorize. Let's just quickly go through a recap and then we'll finish. So first category was the things that we have to do. We can't even miss them at once. If we leave them, then we'll be sinful. And that was the fard. And wajib was necessary, which is right next to fard. And then we learned the sunnah categories. Those things that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to do. And then we said sunnah was of two types. Sunnah mu'akkada, sunnah ghair mu'akkada. Sunnah mu'akkada, those things that the Prophet ﷺ would do regularly and he never missed them out, so we have to do them. If we miss them out once or twice, we won't be sinful. But if we have a habit, then it's problematic. Allah can reprimand us or punish us for it. And sunnah ghair mu'akkada is those things that the Prophet did sometimes or occasionally. So we don't have to do them, but obviously we should try our best to do it. And then we learn the makruh section. That the makruh was also two types, tanzihi and tahrimi. Tanzihi is lightly disliked, tahrimi is severely disliked. And then we said haram and makruh tahrimi are more or less the same in terms of you'll be sinful for doing both of them. Mustahab is something which is good to do, and if you don't do it, it's not too much of a problem. but it's something if you do it, you'll get rewards. Mubah is something completely neutral, it's just allowed. And then within the last four, nawaqid, those things that break other actions. Nafil is a optional type of worship that we do. And tahara means cleanliness. Najasa is impurity. Okay, so I want you to memorize this sheet now. You need to know all the words. And then after this, go through the worksheets to help you remember them. See if you've remembered them. And we're finished there.